Nayan, hi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
In pain, I'll be honest. I'm in
Are
pain.
you? Oh,
Yeah, that's okay.
are you in a sling?
Uh, Hang on, I will try and yeah,
Oh yeah.
very,
Okay. Okay.
very, very fetching houndstooth pattern as well. Uh,
Can't forget fashion. Oh my gosh.
uh,
Well, I'm glad you made it. It sounds like you've had an eventful day. Do you want to start from the beginning and tell us who you are, where you are? Start there, I
sure.
guess.
Okay. Right. The beginning is a very good place to start. So my name is Nayan Gowda. I am a winemaker. I studied in Australia and have been making wine professionally now for I think 16 years. I'm currently working in Bolivia with a project with a company called Jardin Oculto, which in Spanish means secret garden. And this is a project by a young lady called Maria Jose Granier, who should be on here as well, I think,
Okay.
who is my boss. Um, and Basically, she was introduced to this really old vineyard about 2 years ago. And when I'm talking really old, I'm not talking about 30 years old or 50 years old. I'm talking about something that's 200 years old. These vines were planted by Spanish missionary. Well, vines were planted throughout South America by Spanish missionaries as they came through. And this particular vineyard was planted by one family. That was done about 200 years ago. And the vineyard is still in the same hands to this day. It's still within the
Oh,
same family. Um, the traditional method of plant, I mean, you guys have seen vineyards, you've seen pictures of vineyards, you've seen those beautiful rows that are neatly pruned, generally speaking, neatly pruned. Um, Back in those days, things were done quite differently. The traditional method of planting and training vines back then was to basically you plant a tree, you plant a vine next to the tree, and you let them grow together. So there's this symbiotic relationship between the tree and the vine. So these vines can get up to, in some cases, they've got up to about 20 foot high.
hmm.
And so the only way to manage them and the only way to harvest them is basically to get a ladder and climb up into the vine and pick the grapes. It's nuts. It's absolutely insane.
I mean, it's got to be very labor intensive.
It is. Absolutely, it is. And I mean, I'll be completely honest. They don't necessarily make better fruit by the way it's grown. I mean, a vine's natural habitat is to grow up against a tree,
Sure.
and this is basically emulating that. Um, what we want to try and do is we want to preserve this heritage
Hmm.
because previously all vineyards in the region that we're making wine in, which is called Sinti, were planted like this. But as you said, it's very labor intensive and there's not necessarily a great return on investment for that. So more and more people have gone over to contemporary viticulture, to
Okay.
normal rows, normal pruning, proper canopy management. So there's very, very few pockets of vines that are trained like this, but we really want to preserve this heritage. We really want to show that you can make good wines from it and wines that people would really want to drink as well.
So there's a few questions. Carrie Sumner in Roussillon is on here, and she was asking what I know, right? She was asking what kind of trees, and then and I'll go through a few questions, one at a time.
Sure. Okay, traditionally there are two types of native tree here. There's one called the moye, which is also known as the Peruvian pink peppercorns.
Oh.
And if you've ever had pink peppercorn, that's where that's the tree that they come from. And the other one is called the chanya, which is again another species from the Altiplano area. And it's quite interesting because traditionally both of those trees had agricultural uses as well. They weren't just used as support for vines. Okay. So, for example, the moye, as I said, you have the pink peppercorns, and also the leaves and the bark were used as a dye for clothes back in the day. Wow. With the chanya, the fruit was used to make some kind of a kind of molasses that we're still trying to find out about. And part of the whole project that we're thinking about, we keep having crazy ideas with this. Part of the project is to utilize those pink peppercorns from the moye, the molasses from the chanya, and maybe trying to make some kind of vermouth from it, maybe. I don't know, some kind of wine-based drink.
Okay, cool.
Again, it's utilizing the heritage, basically.
Sure.
That's it.
So even though traditionally a vine needed a tree to grow, I mean, in the very old days, but Marika Vita asked, do they compete for resources?
I don't believe so. No. No, I mean, it's neither a symbiotic relationship nor is it a competing relationship.
Okay. And then somebody else asked, while we're on the subject, is labor expensive down there?
No, labor is quite cheap.
Okay.
Especially in the rural areas, especially where we go to get the grapes.
So I want to back up a little bit because I do want to show, I have a bunch of pictures that you posted on Facebook and I want to talk through those I'm going to do them in like the order you posted them as you were getting there. But first, can you just kind of back up and tell us your story, how you got into wine, and then you've got an interesting story of where you've made wine.
Before I was a winemaker, I used to be a chef. And I basically ended up developing a food allergy in the kitchen and ended up in hospital, was told that I should never cook again. And then I entered the wilderness years, as I say, where I really didn't know what to do. But the restaurant I had worked at were very keen on educating their staff and developing the staff's potential. So one of the things they did do was to put all the staff through the Wine and Spirits Education Trust courses.
Wow.
So me as a lowly chef who really had no interest in wine, got sent on one of these courses. And during my wilderness years, I was thinking, I've got to try and focus somehow. So I did the next level of the course, and then I thought, actually, I'm enjoying this. And I did the next level of the course. And then the more I studied wine, drank wine, the more I thought, well, this is actually not that dissimilar to cooking, really.
Right.
If I can cook, I can probably make wine.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't get the pieces together. It took a while to realize that there were degree courses out there that I could do. There was experience I could have. So with the support of my parents, I think at the age of, 32, was it later than that? Well, anyway, quite old. I enrolled at Adelaide University to do the undergraduate course there, and I really haven't looked back since.
And then you've made wine in unusual places too.
Yes. Well, Australia, obviously. I've made wine in Australia and New Zealand as well. But I've also worked in Germany. I've worked in Hungary. I've worked in Ukraine. Ran a winery in Kazakhstan for a while as well. I like to make wine in interesting places.
And so how did the Bolivia job come about?
So I helped run a Facebook group for winemakers and viticulturalists to connect people who are looking for jobs, and to connect people who are looking for information, and to connect people who are offering jobs. We've been going since about 2007, and I think we've got something like 37,000 people now involved in that
Oh
group.
my
So
gosh.
it's not a small group,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of managing. But we have people from all over the world who will sort of say, "I'm making wine here. Can I have some help?" Maria Jose was one of those people who sort of said, "There's this project in Bolivia. Would any be interested?" And I immediately put my hand up. It was it was right up my street.
Do you speak Spanish?
I'm trying to learn Spanish at the moment.
It's a good opportunity to learn now.
Exactly. I've got nothing else to do.
So when you plan to go down there, and now remind people that it's the Southern Hemisphere, so you're in harvest now. Remind people the schedule and how the Corona happened as you were over there, and how things evolved kind of quickly.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's been crazy. So I got here just at the end of January, and basically spent the first few weeks going to the vineyard itself, tasting around, obviously talking and spending time with Maria Jose, drinking together, which is very, very important. Honestly, it is. If you're going to be making wine with somebody, you need to have an understanding of their palate.
Yeah.
And it's something like that I'm very, very keen on. And it doesn't matter if you're drinking wine, beer, coffee, or whatever. You need to be able to have that shared language. And honestly, the first time I walked, well, everyone will see the pictures shortly, but the first time I walked into that vineyard, I mean, you can't even really call it a vineyard. I lasted about half an hour before my head just exploded. It was like nothing I had ever seen before. I mean, Maria Jose had warned me, but warning and seeing it firsthand were two completely different experiences.
Yeah.
So anyway, I returned the following week and had a better idea and was less intimidated by the whole situation. So in the background, while this was happening, we could also see the development of the pandemic going on, and reports coming out of people falling ill. Bolivia seems to have avoided it somewhat, but people falling ill in countries around us, especially Brazil, for instance. And slowly it started to encroach upon us, and we started to feel the pressure of it. I mean, people were starting to wear masks. People weren't shaking hands, for example. And then all of a sudden, the Bolivian government decided that they were going to introduce quarantine measures. We'd already harvested one of our grape varieties, which is a variety called Vistakenya, prior to that. And then literally all of a sudden they said, well, that's it, we're going to lock down. You're not going to be able to travel after 6 o'clock in the evening or before 7 o'clock in the morning. You can't go between departments, and our winery the winery we work out of is in Tarija, which is one department, and our grapes are in another department, which is called Chuquisaca.
Wow.
So there was this kind of, well, panic, really, I suppose, as to how were we going to get the rest of the grapes in the time that we had, with the limitations that we had. And this isn't even the only limitation that we had. We only had enough picking cases for one pick for 2 tons of grapes at one time, and we still had about 4 tons out there. So, so that was one thing, and also just finding the time. And basically, as soon as the quarantine started, all of those people that we had used for picking before left that region to go and spend time with their families, which is completely understandable.
Yeah.
So we finally found a window of one day where we could potentially pick before everything was completely and utterly locked down. But we didn't have, we had, as I said, enough cases for 2 tons, 4 tons of grapes, and no pickers. But we thought we'd give it a try anyway. The day before the pick, Campos de Solana and Casa Real, bless them, agreed to lend us another 100 picking cases.
Okay.
Then our only challenge was getting them to the vineyard, which is 3 hours away. But we managed to do that. Still hadn't got any pickers though. But that's fine. That's fine. We had the cases. They were at the vineyard, all 200 of them. So we sort of pelted it over to the vineyard, 3-hour drive. Got to the hotel near the vineyard just before quarantine. Basically, if we'd been out on the roads after that point, we would have been arrested. And that would be the harvest over anyway. And so we got to the hotel, talked to the lovely lady who runs it, and she said, leave it with me. I'll find you some pickers. And next thing we know, we had 20 pickers.
Oh my gosh.
She just made a few phone calls and that was it. So, yeah, I mean, from what looked completely and utterly bleak to everybody around us just pulling together. I mean, this is what it's like here, though. Everybody pulls together here. It's wonderful, wonderful.
That's just, what a great story. Gosh.
Yeah.
So harvest is done now.
Harvest is done. So yeah, harvest is done. Well, at least the grapes are in the tank. We've pressed off the red now as well. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we can't actually get to the winery.
Oh, really?
Because, well, me with my shoulder for a start. With the quarantine regulations, we're only allowed out for 5 hours a week on a specified day. Maria Jose had special dispensation.
Okay.
But she tripped over her dog the other night and broke her arm. So she can't try.
Oh my God, this is like the impossible harvest. Wow. Oh my God, Nayan. Well then, do you want to tell people your story too, your latest developments?
Oh yeah, so I absolutely randomly last week, I just tripped and fell badly and dislocated my arm. So my left shoulder. And then last night, I was quite happily, comfortably sleeping. I don't know what I did, but I managed to re-dislocate my shoulder. So I've been in hospital all morning and got out about 3 hours ago.
Yeah, you tweeted at me from the hospital this morning, and I was like, this guy's a champ. He's not letting everything stop him. I'm very impressed.
They give me some good drugs. That's all I can say.
They have those down there.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm going to try this. This is a new thing for me. I'm going to pull up some pictures, and you're going to, and hopefully they're in the right order, and you'll tell us what we're seeing.
Okay, so this is a view basically from the landing of the vineyard. That, as you see in front of you, is a vineyard. I mean, you couldn't mistake it for being anything else, really, could you? It's not a forest. It's actually, I mean, it looks like a forest, doesn't it?
Though. Yeah, it looks like a jungle. I mean, yeah,
that's pretty much what it is.
All right, and then this kind of puts it in perspective where you are.
Yeah, so this is a much a view from higher up. I actually had brought a drone out with me because when I was warned about what I was going to be facing, I thought the best thing to do would be to get some aerial shots and some 3D scanning, which I haven't put online, but this gives you an idea of what you can see. And
people can look at your Instagram to see. I think you've got a little more in-depth notes on what these pictures are, and my face isn't impeding some of the. I can't control the size.
It's a lovely face, though, isn't it? So okay, yeah. So anyway, that's Enrique in the background there, whose family owns the vineyard. So yeah, it's a shame you can't really see it, but you can sort of see that behind Enrique is what looks like a tree, or it could be a vine. That's pretty much what it's like there. You go there and you think, is this a tree or is this a vine? And then you have to look up and work out which is which. I think I have better pictures of that. That kind of is what you're saying. You can't really tell where the vine begins and the tree ends. Pretty much, yeah. And there are these supports down here, in the center, the light thing sticking up, it looks like a wooden. Yes. So, I mean, this is all organically grown. I mean, and so as there hasn't been any trellising put there, basically as things grow and as things get heavier over time, they just need bits of wood
Oh, I see.
to support them, to stop them snapping.
Okay, we'll see a little bit more of that as we get closer. This is just, again, is there anything to say about this one? It's just, I think, another view.
Well, this is kind of the view, but on the left-hand side of that image, that's the Morier tree there. You can see the leaves, but it kind of gives you context as to the landscape that the vineyard is in. So just to give you some idea, it's a valley called the Cinti Valley, which runs north to south.
Okay.
It's stunning. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's on both sides are this mountain range of these bright red mountains. This doesn't really do it justice, unfortunately.
Yeah, wow.
And then there's a river that goes down the center. And that is where the center of agriculture and viticulture is. There is nothing else, I mean, further than about 100 meters either side of that river. Wow. Originally, I think until 1960, there used to be 1,500 hectares of vineyards in the region. And now there's less than 300. And even those are starting to disappear.
Wow. So it's you and 2 or 3 other people? I mean,
there's a few more than that. Yeah, there's a few more than that. But most of the production goes into Singani, which is the local version of Pisco.
So how big is the property that you're harvesting, and who are those wines intended for? Are they exported or it's all local?
So the property itself is we will have to see. I mean, the domestic market for wine in Bolivia, especially fine wine, is quite small. We had an idea of a sales and marketing strategy, and then the pandemic hit. So, I mean, that's going to change things, not just for us, but for basically everybody in the industry. So we will see. It'll definitely be a combination of restaurants, private sales, and a little bit of export.
Okay.
But our production's tiny. This year is as much about proof of concept that we can make really interesting wines from these vineyards, from this vineyard.
It sounds to me like potential unicorn wine.
Yeah, potentially.
So what do we have here? That's an amazing picture.
So that's a pink muscat. It's not one that we use for our wines, but it's an example of something called hen and chicken, which is just where the berry hasn't fertilized properly. So you get a normal sized berry, which is the big one, and then all the other little ones, which are the chickens.
That's so interesting.
The unfertilized.
My grandma used to have a garden with those little succulent cactuses that we called hen and chicks. That was the same concept, I guess. What do we have here? Just the.
Oh, this is just a view in the sort of central valley. So you've got Tarija, which is where I am at the moment, which is where the winery is, which is one valley. This is the next valley after that, which is just arid. I mean, it looks as though it just doesn't rain there. Okay. And then the next valley after that is the Cinti Valley.
So is this picture taken from an airplane or from a mountain that you're on?
Oh, from car. Actually, that's a good point. I haven't actually explained this. This is a very, very good point. So where we are is 22 degrees south of the equator. This is not normal viticultural territory at all. Okay. The only reason that viticulture is viable here is because of the elevation we have. Tarija is at about 1,800 to 1,900 meters above sea level. The vineyard in Cintis is 2,300 meters. But to get to the vineyard, you have to go over 2 mountain ranges, which take you above 3,300 meters.
Wow.
It's insane.
So Miko, Rossignol, and Burgundy, and Veronique Dose at
All I know is that I've made the wines this year in a way that I think is sympathetic to the fruits.
and just stick around. This is extreme winemaking in Bolivia. So this is the vine and the tree you were talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah. So it's your guess, which is the vine and which is the tree there.
So this combo vine and tree would be 200 years old?
Potentially, yeah. It's anything up to 200 years old. The family has had the property for 200 years, and they're the ones who planted it.
Okay.
So
the next picture is a little more, shows exactly the winemaking. But while we're here, Bertil Tottenberg asked you, what direction is the 2020 vintage going? Will the style be the same as the 2019, or will the style change drastically?
That's a very good question. We have tried. We have had issues, let's put it that way, because a lot of our decisions have had to be a result of the limitations that we've had because of the quarantine issues of the pandemic.
Sure.
So, and also we're working out of somebody else's winery.
Okay.
It's not necessarily set up for the small volume that we are doing.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, I wasn't the person who made the wines last year. So I don't know exactly how the wines were made last year. All I know is that I've made the wines this year in a way that I think is sympathetic to the fruits and in a style that is different from pretty much anything else you'll see in Bolivia currently, because the winemaking here is quite traditional.
Okay.
But I find them fresh and interesting and modern, but not in a pejorative sense. And I'm hoping Bertel, who is from Gustu in La Paz, would like them, and I'm pretty confident that he would.
Okay. Awesome. Here and now, of course, my face is behind the guy, but that's a person. I wish I could get out of here.
That's another picture of Enrique behind your head, but it's also another picture of vine tree, which is which.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's his elbow with a short sleeve shirt and some blue jeans. But
that's right. Yes.
That's kind of again your vine and tree.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Oh, here we go. Let me just show a couple like this, and then this is the one I've been wanting to show because it really shows what it takes to pick the grapes there.
Yeah, I hope that's clear for people. But
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
can see it.
you have a guy up a ladder. You've got the guy basically holding the box up so he can put the bunches of grapes in the box. It's, as you said, it's very, very labor intensive to do.
It's
It takes.
insane. It's insane. So, how are you holding up? This is like an intense. I'm gonna leave this picture up because I don't like my face covering up everything. How are you holding up? This has been a lot, and you're kind of confined now, right? So your confinement is very extreme.
Yeah, so because I've been in hospital where you have sick people, I've been advised to self-isolate for 14 days. So I had got through 7 days of that 14 days before I ended up in hospital again. So I now have another 14 days to self-isolate.
And
But
are you only still allowed 1 beer a day from like your shopping requirements? I can't. I'm like,
no.
I can't.
No. I can drink more. They advise against drinking too much because of the injury, because it'll slow down
Okay.
healing.
Well,
So,
fair enough. But
you'll be happy to know that Maria Jose and her husband Elios are keeping me in booze. They're keeping me in food.
Okay, you can
honestly,
see where my priorities are.
I can't think of two better people to be associated with on a project, and they are taking so much care of me. They are wonderful.
Good. Well, that's good to hear. I've been trying to keep this at a half hour, and I know you're in pain, and you have been a very good sport. So I want to let you go. But do you want to say anything just to wrap it up and say goodbye? And this, you've been a champ, and it's great to just see you and chat with you.
What would I say? Well, thank you very much for listening and hearing me rambling on. If you do have any questions, you know my Instagram handle now. Send me a message. I'm quite happy to answer any questions. I can return to you with an email address, and we can have a more in-depth discussion.
I appreciate that.
This is a fascinating project, and it's only just starting.
Yeah, really.
I'm so privileged to be involved in it.
How long will you stay?
I don't know how long quarantine is going to be.
Oh, right. Okay. So, but normally you would leave after the wine is in.
Well, middle of June. We're trying to produce, at least for this year, is quite an early drinking style. So it's going to be a style that will be bottled relatively early.
Okay.
To capture that freshness, that bit of CO, that bit of spritz as well. The climate here is generally sort of you can drink chilled wines anytime, and that's kind of what we want as well.
Okay.
So yeah, the idea was to leave middle of June, but we'll just have to see what happens. As it is, we're going to struggle bottling because our bottles are stuck at the border because of the quarantine.
Just one thing after another, man. Well, you seem to be in very good spirits despite all of this. It shows you're a true professional. I am going to put this whole thing on YouTube because it's been really, really fascinating. And I'll send you a link. And anybody that wants, you can find all these videos on my profile too. But like Nayan said, he's happy to answer questions if you want to DM him. And I would imagine a little bit bored, so I'm sure you're receptive to some conversation. So thank you so much. It's been really nice to see you. It's been great to catch up and really hear about the story, and keep posting.
Will do, Jeff. It's been an absolute pleasure. We need to catch up before too long.
I would love it. And bring some bottles back to France so the next time I see you, we can taste that.
Definitely.
Love it. Okay, take care, man.
All right.
Good to see you.